Aces can hold space in a family in a way that both resembles and in a way that diverges from our archaic ideas of what family is. Hello lovely humans, welcome to this space on the internet. This is episode 3 of Busting Myths and Misconceptions about Asexuality. So if you haven't watched the first 2 episodes, go watch them. There's a playlist called, I think, Busting Myths and Misconceptions about Asexuality. As a quick preface to what the series is, if you have decided to watch this video first for whatever reason, I am absolutely demolishing, disproving, destroying all of the things that ace-phobes, people who don't like the asexuals so much, all of the things that the ace-phobes say that aren't true. We're gonna debunk them. This episode in particular is going to be addressing myths and misconceptions related to relationships and how asexuality and relationships intersect. So let's go! Misconception number 1 for this video, number 12 overall, is aces don't date and can't have romantic feelings. In essence, conflating asexuality with aromanticism. So, some aces do date, some aces do not date. It really and truly is that simple. Asexuality is commonly separated from romantic orientation, such as in the case of those who are very oriented, or those whose romantic and sexual orientations don't have the same prefixes or don't match. For example, being a homoromantic asexual, meaning you are attracted to the same gender romantically and nobody sexually. This is called using the split attraction model, and it's pretty common in the ace community, though I think we should also hold space for those who do not use the split attraction model. Some asexuals will date because they have an allo-romantic romantic orientation, or a not aromantic romantic orientation. Meaning they do experience romantic attraction and potentially want to pursue romantic relationships. Some aces may also date despite not having romantic or sexual feelings. And some aces might date despite not even wanting a romantic or sexual partner, because dating is not inherently romantic. But in conclusion, asexuality and aromanticism are not the same thing. And regardless of such, anyone can date. And often aces do date, whether it be in pursuit of a romantic relationship or not. Misconception number 13. We are bound to die alone, and as asexual people, we cannot become parents or build families. This statement makes me kind of sad, because oftentimes it does feel like this is the dominant narrative around people who are asexual and aromantic, such as myself. As mentioned before, not all aces are also aromantic, so some aces may build families around a romantic relationship or a romantic partnership, and we cannot assume that aces do not want a partner or a family, regardless of romantic orientation. I believe this myth is the product of the idea of being in pursuit of a nuclear family, which is the direct result of amatonormativity. Go watch my video about it in this corner, I think. If you do not follow what is considered a typical family structure, we're given the impression that there's no other way, or no other correct way, to have a family. When in our ace and human reality, family looks a lot of different ways. Aces can hold space in a family in a way that both resembles and in a way that diverges from our archaic ideas of what family is. Misconception number 14. We can't form meaningful long-term relationships. Nope. I think this misconception could be the result of placing so much ultimate worth on sexual relationships. There is no universal relationship hierarchy, so sexual relationships aren't everyone's closest or most fulfilling relationship by any means, regardless of whether they are asexual. To disregard the value of non-sexual relationships is to be ignorant to the importance of various social dynamics and different relationship types. Thus, it is impossible to assume that asexuals cannot form meaningful relationships, because someone's asexuality does not necessarily mean anything for their capacity for close bonds. Misconception number 15. Aces are boring due to a presumed lack of sexual relationships. This misconception is particularly prominent in media that depicts asexual characters and in the ideas surrounding asexuality in literature and in film. Sexuality is indeed a way to add dimension to a plotline or story. What I think we often fail to acknowledge is that asexuality is equally a sexual orientation and sexual identity. It's confusing and unfortunate to me that asexuality is still often considered less interesting or multifaceted than any other sexual identity, or when compared to allosexual storylines. What I would conclude is that there's no real reason for considering aces to be boring. Other than that, we live in a world whose entertainment industry is somewhat infatuated by sex and sexuality. And then asexual people are often assumed to not have anything to do with sex or sexuality, which isn't necessarily true. Again, myth number 16. Aces are lucky because we will never experience heartbreak. I've actually been told this before, or something similar. I was trying to talk to some girls in my class, and they were talking about their crushes, and I was trying to impersonate a human being and talk to them. And eventually it came up that, I don't know, I'd never had a crush. And they were like, "What? Really? You've never had that feeling?" And then there was one girl in the group who was like, "Lucky." I was like, I guess. I guess that's lucky. Romantic things. Haha. So I was told that I'm lucky to not have to worry about having crushes, I suppose. And then, funnily enough, moments later, they continued talking about their respective crushes, and I faded into the background and eventually just walked away because I didn't really have a place in that conversation. Mind you, I don't have a place in many conversations at all because I don't know what I'm doing in conversations, but that aside, there was something somewhat exclusionary about that experience. So I don't think that we're necessarily lucky or fortunate in any way to feel alienated from a common experience that many people around us seem to have. So perhaps this story illustrates for you why this notion that asexuals are lucky for being asexual is incorrect and can be somewhat hurtful. So I know that it's common to see jokes about how, like, asexuals are too busy planning world domination for such silly things such as sexual attraction. And while I think these are funny, particularly because even before I identified myself as asexual, I sort of fit into these stereotypes. People were like, "You're just too busy being some evil villain schemer who's going to take over the world." That's apparently what I seem like. I don't know. Do you think so? But then I also think that for a lot of people, just because we're ace doesn't necessarily mean we want to be excluded from little human things. Maybe that's just me though. Myth number 17. Aces can only date other ace people, or basically that we're incompatible with allosexual people. Nope, aces can date anyone. Aces can be anything. What an asexual person wants from a relationship will differ from asexual person to asexual person, and how someone gets along with a partner will vary from relationship to relationship, and there's not really any reason that an ace and allosexual relationship couldn't work. It's just another element in that particular relationship. If it wasn't that, it'd be something else, you know? Anyways, just know you can have an ace-allo relationship, you can have an ace-ace relationship. It just depends on the people involved and how you're willing to work with the experiences and feelings you have, like any relationship. Any other asexual people feel like a relationship counselor just because you sort of have this, like, different perspective of not really being into partnerships if you're a non-partnering asexual, that is. Like, I feel like I'm just telling people the basics here, but apparently there's some asexual element to this. No, it's just a normal relationship, I think. And lastly, misconception number 18, we cannot feel deep love for others. For the most part, I believe aces have relatively equal capacity for love as any other person. It's possible that it may look different or it may take different forms, of course. And I also would like to acknowledge it's possible that asexuals or aromantic people, too, won't feel love as deeply in some ways or circumstances or whatever, and that doesn't diminish their worth as a person. So this myth is incorrect in its generalization and just entirely false to its application to what I would guess are the majority of people on the asexual spectrum. That is all the myths and misconceptions for this video. Thank you for watching. The next episode in this series will be on the pathologization of asexuals, or in other words, like the medicalization, and ways that we're treated as if asexuality is a disease. Farewell, lovely humans!